Hi there, I'm Matt Dolly, and this is your Week 14 Eagles at Dallas Cowboys game preview, and it doesn't get any bigger than this. The NFC conference leading Philadelphia Eagles head to Dallas to take on the 9-3 NFC division rival, Dallas Cowboys. There are huge playoff implications here on the line in this one as the Eagles dropped to 10-2 after that loss to the San Francisco 49ers last week. A loss again this week could mean we have a potential fatal four-way tie there amongst the top teams in the NFC with 10-3 records when Week 14 comes to its conclusion. Philadelphia, they won the last battle between these two teams back on November 5th when the Cowboys came up just a few yards short in a 28-23 contested contest. A win this time around will prove to be difficult as the Cowboys have won 6 of their previous 7 games and have scored at least 40 points in each of their last 4 home games. Some haters will point out that Dallas hasn't beaten anyone, 9-1 against teams below 500, but hey, you have to win those games and you're supposed to win. But in Dak Prescott, he is playing at MVP caliber level, throwing 20 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions over the last 6 weeks. Philadelphia, they have been one of the best teams when it comes to defending the run. No doubt about that, especially in fantasy football this season. They've allowed just 1,205 total yards to running backs and 3 touchdowns, which works out to the second fewest fantasy points. However, over the season and even the last 4 games, no team is allowing more fantasy points to the quarterback position than the Eagles have. In the last 4 weeks, they have allowed 28.63 fantasy points per game while allowing 6 passing touchdowns. The lack of success extends to the wide receiver position, where they have been responsible for giving up 7 receiving touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. Yes, that was courtesy of Deebo Samuel last week. Over that 4-week sample size here, accounted for 555 total yards and 41 receptions, which adds up to the second most fantasy points yielded. Since the Dallas Cowboys Week 7 bye, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott ranked first and second in PPR scoring, averaging 29.2 and 28.8 fantasy points per game, respectively. Now, Philadelphia, they will need to figure out some kind of way to slow down the hottest connection in the NFL. They certainly didn't have an answer back in November when Prescott torched them for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns, hooking up with CeeDee Lamb 11 times for 191. Prescott targeted Lamb 16 times in that game. The bottom line is, Mary had a little lamb, so does Dak Prescott. Bottom line is, you're starting Dak Prescott, you're starting CeeDee Lamb, and you should also be plugging in Brandon Cooks in those fantasy lambs after what he has done in the last 4 weeks. That's 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. We watched Deebo Samuel take advantage of this Eagles team out of the slot, while the Eagles have allowed more touchdowns to outside receivers than any other team as well. Prescott outperformed Hurts back in that Week 9 contest, but Hurts, he ended up getting the win. I guess that's what matters, but it's not like Hurts played terrible. He finished with a 130.2 passer rating, throwing for 207 yards and a pair of scores. He also found the end zone on the ground, adding that touchdown and 36 rushing yards. That game against the Cowboys was also the last time that we saw Dallas Goedert, who makes his return this week in an all-important heavyweight battle. If the Eagles are to repeat the previous result, then they're going to need to win once again on 3rd down and get to Dak Prescott. In that Week 9 contest, the Cowboys would end up going 6 for 15 on 3rd down. In Philadelphia, they sacked Prescott 5 times. Now remember, last week Seattle, they ended up hitting Dak Prescott on 7 occasions and sacked him 4 times. The Eagles face a Cowboys defense that comes into this one allowing the 8th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season. But we all did just witness what DK Metcalf did to Deron Bland. He basically did him dirty last week to the tune of 134 yards and 6 catches, forcing the Cowboys to switch up their coverage assignments. As good as Dallas has been, we saw Geno Smith throw for 334 yards and a trifecta of scores, and that has to create some kind of doubt in Cowboys truthers entering this playoff pivotal type matchup. A.J. Brown, he now has 8 or more targets in 9 of the last 10 games, but last week was the first time in 4 weeks in which he would end up getting his 100 yards receiving. The production that Brown has lost, Devonta Smith has found. He has now had 95 or more receiving yards in 4 of his last 5 contests and has seen at least 8 or more targets in every game during Dallas Goedert's absence. He also has 14 or more fantasy points in 5 straight games and is coming off a 24-point fantasy performance against that 49ers team just a week ago. With Goedert in the lineup, however, buyer beware. Over the last 2 seasons, Devonta Smith has seen 1.4 fewer targets, 20 fewer receiving yards, and 3.5 fewer fantasy points per game. And that is something fantasy managers need to keep an eye on. Philadelphia is going to need to find some sort of balance here in their offense and in their defense. Brock Purdy not only torched this secondary for 314 yards and 4 scores, but the 49ers defense completely phased out DeAndre Swift. So far this season, Swift has 783 rushing yards. He averages 4.7 yards per carry, yet the 49ers' dominance in the trenches held Swift to just 6 rushing attempts there for 13 yards. San Francisco is ranked 5th when it comes to the stingiest defenses in fantasy against the running back position. And the Dallas Cowboys, they are the 3rd toughest team when it comes to accumulating those fantasy points. Swift, he's going to need to be more effective than he was back in Week 9 when he averages 2.2 yards per carry against his Dallas defense and finished with just 42 yards. All eyes are going to be on Dallas this week, and that includes multiple fan bases who have a rooting interest one way or the other. We have ourselves a great one, and the winner of this contest could end up with home field advantage throughout the playoffs. With that all being said, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the Vipers Network for plenty more great fantasy football analysis. See you next time.